instead too. All right. So we're just going to talk really loud tonight so that way they can... they should be able to hear me good. I just charged that thing. Well, a couple weeks ago. Kind of forgot about that. All right. Oop, wrong way. All right, so we are in chapter 7. If you have your Bibles, go to chapter 7 if you'd like to, or you can just look at the screen here. Remember that we have just went through the first 6 scrolls, right? The Lamb came, or the Lion of Judah, depending on if you were John or one of the 12 or 24 elders, and your vision of who you saw. We are what's called the interlude. All right, so all of chapter 7 is really like a pausing, okay? A little bit more explanation, a little bit more deeper into the first 6 scrolls that were open. It says, "And after this I saw 4 angels standing on the 4 corners of the earth, holding back the 4 winds of the earth, so that no wind would blow on the earth or on the sea or on any tree." Now, the thing that I want you to think about is there's a lot of references to the 4 corners of the earth. Not saying that they believed the earth was flat, but that was to signify the whole earth, okay? No matter if you see like in Isaiah 11:12, Ezekiel 7:2, and there's a lot of this usage in the Septuagint. Now the Septuagint is, I have it in like this Bible here. It's also called the Apocrypha, and I'm going to refer to some of those today. Some Bibles have the Septuagint. It's often you'll see like an L and an X and an X. That is the original translation from Greek or from Hebrew to Greek. And these were books that were part of the scrolls, if you will. There's also scrolls that have been found, and they are called pseudepigrapha or pseudepigraphal. Those, again, they're not in our canon. When our canon was put together about 350 to 400 AD by the Council of Nicaea. But these were things that would have been known. Okay, sort of like you've probably heard about the book of Enoch. You may have heard about the book of Baruch. You may have heard of the additional books of Esther or Tobiah. Or there's a lot of books that were in that. And the pseudepigrapha were letters like they have, and I just found them today. Unfortunately, they wanted money, so like every 3rd page is blanked out till I buy it. Jerks. Like the book was written in like 0 AD. I think it's free copyright at this point, but anyways. But anyway, so the 4 corners, that's a huge reference in the Septuagint, in the book of Baruch, the Testament of Asher, the Greek Apocalypse of Ezra, 3rd Enoch. This was a big term that was used to basically say in all the earth. So picture here what's going on. John is saying that all the scrolls got open, but we notice that none of them were sent. Do you remember it said, "Come to that horse and rider"? It said, "Come," but they were not sent. So they're standing and waiting to go. After I saw the 4 angels standing at the 4 corners of the earth, holding back the 4 winds of the earth. The 4 winds we see in Jeremiah 49, we see in Daniel 8:8 and 11:4. Again, we see it in Mark, we see it in Matthew, we see it in the Septuagint, 1st Enoch and 2nd Esdras. Again, we see it in Zechariah with the 4 horsemen, 6:1 through 8. We see this picture, so picture in your mind that John has just witnessed all these scrolls getting open. We've got the white horse that's ready, the red horse and rider that's ready, the black horse is ready, the pale horse that's ready. But they haven't been sent yet, and here's why. "And I saw another angel ascending from the rising sun, having the seal of the living God, and he cried out with a loud voice to the 4 angels to whom it was granted to harm the earth and the sea, saying, 'Do not harm the earth or sea or trees until we have sealed the bondservants of our God on their forehead.'" Now, here's a big issue. First off, none of the seals have gone, but if you'll notice, all the seals have to do with what? Remember back, think about the seals. What did it have to do with?
Somebody opening them.
I'm sorry?
Somebody opening them.
Well, somebody opening them, but what did each one of the seals, each one of the writers, what were they supposed to do? They were to affect the earth. Right? We had an earthquake. We had the writers going out. We had things affecting the earth. That's why he says, don't do anything don't harm the earth, the sea, or the trees until we have sealed the bondservants of our God on their forehead. Now, this is a huge question as to, well, what does it mean and what are you thinking that will be the seal upon our forehead? Any ideas?
The mark of being
I'm sorry?
the mark of being one of the children of God.
Well, so the question is what kind of mark? Okay? We're going to see this again later in Revelation where it talks about, being sealed by God. But here's the thing. In Ezra 9:4, somebody looked that up for me. Somebody also look up for me 2 Timothy 2:19. Who's got Ezra? Or I'm sorry, Ezekiel. Ezekiel 9:4. Anybody? Anybody? Bueller? Anybody awake? If you're awake, hold your hand up.
I got 2 Timothy.
Okay, you got 2 Timothy?
What?
2 Timothy 2:19. Hold that in, because I want to go to Ezekiel 9:4. Ezekiel 9:4.
I got it.
Got it? All right, go ahead and read Ezekiel 9:4.
And said to him, go throughout the city of Jerusalem and put a mark on the foreheads of those who grieve and lament over all the detestable things that are done in it.
Okay, so we see a prophet being sent out to mark God's people. 2 Timothy, this is Paul writing to Timothy, 2 Timothy 2:19.
But God's truth stands firm like a foundation stone with this inscription. The Lord knows those who are his, and all who belong to the Lord must turn away from evil. Okay, your version's a little different, but an inscription on your head. What will be, I don't believe personally that I'm going to get a tattoo with, so if we think about the Greek letter, it kind of goes like this and then it's down, like an X. That was the quick way of writing Christos or Christ, okay? So some believe that we'll have a X marks the spot on my forehead. To me, X marks the spot is where somebody's going to shoot me. I don't want a bullseye on my head. The other thing that we see is in Revelation, we're not there yet, obviously, Revelation 17, it talks about how they will either be marked on their right hand or their forehead. Now, we have to understand that back then, many Christians or Jewish people would carry a phylactery, and it was a little box that they would wear as a headband, and in that box, it would have a Bible verse. Many of them couldn't read, but they might be able to, they would learn that verse, or they would carry it on their arm. John is again, what did Shane just say? He was writing all of this to them, not necessarily us, because Jesus was supposed to come soon. I'm pretty sure that John was not thinking 2,000 years from now, people are going to read this and go, I have no idea what they're talking about. He wrote it to them, and they would understand if you had a phylactery on your forehead or on your wrist, you would be known as a person of God. So what is the mark we're going to see? As Paul put it to Timothy, how did every single one of the churches did it start? To the angel at, I know your deeds. We're going to be known by our actions. God knows us by the Spirit that's living in us, but we will be viewed as Christians when we act like a Christian. If we don't act like a Christian, then we're going to be kind of like Laodicea, and he's going to vomit us out of his mouth. Okay? So I don't think we need to get real caught up in this idea that, all these things are the sign of the devil and the beast. And again, we got to keep in context that this was written 95 AD. This was written to those people then, as well as to us now. But we have to keep the historical value in it. Because if we take the historical value out of it, then we could say that the last 2,000 years of people, it didn't matter. They could have taken the book of Revelation out, chucked it, and never cared. Because they didn't have computers then, or they didn't have technology then, or they didn't have this or that or the other. Okay? So, what is the seal, the bondservants of our God on our foreheads? I think that's an illustration that John is using to those people to say that we will be known by the Spirit that is within us, and we will be known by the 7 churches by our deeds. I don't necessarily think that I have to go to a tattoo parlor and get, an X on my forehead. Although my forehead is growing, so it'd be a pretty large X right now. All right, so let's keep going. And I heard the number of those who were sealed, 144,000, sealed from every tribe of the sons of Israel. Now, before we get started, who can tell me all the tribes of Israel? You're cheating. No. She's like, I'll tell you who they are. Well, if you're going to read out of Revelation 7, then you're going to be wrong. The original 12 tribes of Israel were this: Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Daniel, Naphtali, Gad, Asher, Issachar, Zebulun, Joseph, and Benjamin. Okay? So now let's go through this. We've got from the tribe of Judah, 12,000 were sealed. Tribe of Reuben, 12,000 were sealed. Tribe of Gad, 12,000 were sealed. Tribe of Asher, 12,000 sealed. Tribe of Naphtali, 12,000 sealed. From Manasseh, 12,000 were sealed. The tribe of Simeon, 12,000. The tribe of Levi, 12,000. The tribe of Issachar, 12,000. The tribe of Zebulun, 12,000. The tribe of Joseph, 12,000. The tribe of Benjamin, 12,000. Do you notice that there's some changes?
Dan is missing.
Dan is missing. And actually, most of that we see in, so the big one is Ezekiel 48 is kind of what they consider to be, chapter 48 is the eschatological writing of the 12 tribes. So eschatological is the foreseeing of the future. Okay? And even that one, so the 12 tribes of Israel are written in the Old Testament at least 18 times. Every time they're a little different, but they all included the same people. This time, they do not. It's different. And so I think it's something that we need to spend just a little bit of time on. Because, so here's a note that I found. We simply note that the idiosyncrasies of the present listing, without trying to give any meaning to them, first, both Joseph and his son Manasseh are mentioned, while Ephraim is not. Second, the tribe of Dan is omitted. Third, the tribe of Levi is included, which is not included in Ezekiel 48. Now, he gets land, but he's not listed as a tribe. It says the Levites, not the tribe of Levi. So, here's the deal. The omission of Dan is especially noteworthy since it comes from a very, very early time. So, Dan... view is probably related to the bad words that Dan received in the Old Testament, beginning in Jacob's blessing of his sons in 48, where it is said, Genesis 49, it is said, Dan will be a snake by the roadside and a viper along the path. In Jeremiah 8:16 through 17, it says that Dan is pictured as having come to devour the land and everything in it. Finally, if we look at the Testament of Dan, now that's in the 12 patriarchal writings, pseudepigraphal writing, again, not in our canon, but it is ancient writings, so I thought it was interesting. That's why I looked it up. About 400 pages, so obviously I didn't read all of that today. But it says in Dan 5:6, the author says, "For I read in the book of Enoch the righteous that your prince is Satan." Most likely it is based on two Old Testament narratives, Judges 18:30, where the Danites are set up for themselves an idol, and 1 Kings 12:29, where Dan becomes the site of the Baal shrine. Dan was removed out of one of the tribes of Israel because it is the assumption, or was the assumption back then, that Satan would come from the tribe of Dan. So guess what? He gone, Dan's out. Okay? So that's why we don't see Dan there. Now, why is Joseph and Manasseh in there and not Ephraim? I don't know. I looked all over. I could not find anything. I looked several commentaries. I don't know why John listed the way he did. I truly don't. But I thought it was very interesting that the omission of Dan it seemed like very important. Okay? And having Levi back in this list compared to Ezekiel 48, that he was out. So it's kind of like he regained favor in it. The pseudepigraphal writings are Jewish writings ascribed to various biblical patriarchs and prophets, but they were composed within about 200 years before Christ's birth. So if you ever hear the term pseudepigraphal writing, it is something that was written, I'm assuming, or under the assumption, because that was about the same time that the Septuagint was coming into play, and it was a lot of those. There's the Catholic Church, and I think there's one other church. They still have the Septuagint in their writing, which is funny to me because the Council of Nicaea was considered a Catholic group, and they took it out. So then somewhere along the lines, after about 400 AD, the Catholics added it back in, and then some other groups did. Again, I find it very interesting reading, not in our canon, so I would never technically preach from it, but I do think that it is historical writing. It's just no different than if we were to look at something like Irenaeus or Josephus or somebody like that was considered a patriarch of the time. Okay? Does all of that make sense? Sort of, kind of. All right, let's keep going. All right. So, Simeon, we went through all this. Okay, after these things, I looked and behold a great multitude, which no one could count, from every nation, all tribes, all peoples, and all tongues, standing before the throne and before the Lamb, clothed in white robes, and palm branches were in their hands. And they cried out with a loud voice, salvation to our God who sits on the throne, and to the Lamb. Now, who are some of these people, the great multitudes of people that John saw? Christians. The difference is that these people were the martyred ones. Okay? Those that had been martyred that went before. Why? What are they clothed in? White. They got their white robe. They got their wings and their bell ring. No, I'm kidding. Right? So they got their white clothes. And the palm branches, what is that symbol of? The triumphal entry, right? Because then they say what? The elder referred to Jesus as a lion, but now they're back to saying he's the lamb. So this would be humans, if you will, the great multitude that he saw from every nation, all tribes, tongues, people, those that have died and went before. That's who this is, that John has seen. And then we got the angels too, and all the angels were standing around the throne and around the elders and the four living creatures, and they fell on their faces before the throne and worship. Again, fell on their faces. How many times have we seen the elders fall on their faces? A symbol of what? Praise, but what? What else? All of these are what? Humbling. We should never bow down to anyone other than God himself. because that is an act of full submission. If you bow down to someone, you are elevating them to a king or a god. In all the Old Testament, anytime somebody fell to their knees or worshipped in that manner, they were giving up. Because here's the deal. If you were about to be beheaded, if you were found guilty and be beheaded, how do you get? On your knees. Right? You're in full submission to whatever is in front of you. Saying, amen, blessing, glory, wisdom, thanksgiving, honor, power, and might be to our God forever and ever. Amen. Then one of the elders answered, saying to me, these who are clothed in white robes, who are they, and where have they come from? Why would he say that? Again, we're not sure who the elders are. This passage makes me question the concept of the 12 elders. They believe it's the 12 apostles and the 12 tribes of Israel. That person should know who these people are if he was a human. Because they're in their white robes, right? He should know. So this one throws me off a little bit. But he says, who are they and where have they come from? And I said to him, my Lord, you moron, you know. And he said to me, oh, that's right, I'm sorry, I had a headache. These are the ones who have come out of the great tribulation, and they have washed their robes and made them white in the blood of the Lamb. Again, we're thinking symbolically here. If John were to say, they washed their own clothes, who here has ever washed anything with blood on it and got it absolutely white without a whole bunch of help from bleach and other things? John is writing to the people of this time. He's not necessarily writing to the people who don't believe. So understand that if John was writing that to the Virgie Christian church, and he talked about that they have washed their robes, it means what? That they have submitted to Jesus, they have given their life to him, and they have been cleansed by the blood of the Lamb. Someone that's an atheist that would read this and go, see how stupid your Bible is? They can't wash their own clothes in blood and have it become white because they don't understand it. It was written to those who believed. They would have understood this. My Lord, you know, these are the ones who have come out of the Great Tribulation. What is the Great Tribulation? Again, take into consideration, John wrote this in 95 AD. What was going on at the time? Were they in a Great Tribulation? Yes! They were being stoned, they were being burned, they were being beat, they were being crucified, they were being, in every context of Roman Empire, they were being killed. Tell me that you would, if right now all of a sudden somebody came in and a third of us were going to be crucified tonight, a third of us were going to be stoned tomorrow, and half of us, what's left, would get to watch everything. Would you say that this is a Great Tribulation? Yes. John wrote to them, as well as writing to us now, are we still in the Great Tribulation? Yes, because we are in the last days, because Christ arose, and we are waiting for him to come back again. Are we in the Great Tribulation, as John calls it here? Absolutely. Absolutely. Think of it, this was also, somebody look up Revelation 5:9 for me.
And they sang a new song, saying, you are worthy to take the scroll and to open the seals, because you were slain, and your blood you purchased for God persons from every tribe and language and people and nation. You have made them to be a kingdom and priests to serve our God, and they will reign on earth.
Did you see it? All right. Let's keep going. So anyways, so this is also Shane's video kind of hit on this. Conflict, the war that's going on right now, okay? For this reason, they are before the throne of God, and they serve him day and night in his temple, and he who sits on the throne will spread his tabernacle over them. They will hunger no more, thirst no more, nor will the sun beat down on them, nor any heat. For the Lamb is in the center of the throne, will be their shepherd, and will guide them to the springs of water, and God will wipe every tear from their eye. This is kind of the final eschatological for all the martyrs. They have now, because remember before, what did we hear? What did they do? The ones that were calling out from underneath the throne. God, when are you going to avenge our death? When are you going to make things right? And now we see that they are what? They're being raised up with the right robes on. They have been set right. And now the stage is set that the first 6 seals on the scrolls are going to be released. And things are going to change. That's, in my opinion, again, not saying wherever you're at in your beliefs of time and all that kind of stuff, I believe that's where we're at right now. I believe that when someone dies, they go up, they get the robe, because Christ is ready to come back. We're in the scrolls right now. There is death, there is war, there is famine, there is hatred, there is earthquakes. We just saw a huge earthquake in, was it Japan? Thank you. A couple days, yesterday? 2 days ago. Yesterday. Whenever it was. The earth, here's a question for you. Is the earth itself feeling the effects of the fall in Genesis 3?
Yes.
I fully agree with you. I believe that since Genesis 3, when the earth was perfect, when Adam and Eve left and the gates of Eden were closed, that all of creation felt its effects. And since then, because we even see what? It says that even the earth cries out to be made new. So everything was affected at the fall. Revelation is those things, right? The famine, the wars, the pestilence. That's what's going on and has been going on, honestly, since the fall of Genesis 3. It's just in a grander scale now. Why? Because there's a whole lot more people than there was when just Adam and Eve and a couple of kids before, one died, were walking the earth. We see this playing out right before our eyes. And that's where we end the interlude. So again, I want you to read that again. I want you to read chapter 7. If you haven't, read it again. But read it in the context of chapter 6. Because a lot of chapter 6 was just re-identified. If we think about it, the 5th seal was verse 9. There's just a lot there. And I know I'm running out of time and I want to end. Here's a question for you. The 144,000, where does that come from? Any idea?
12,000.
What's that?
12,000, 12 trumpets.
12,000 times 12,000. So the tribes doubled times 1,000. Now 1,000 in a lot of biblical terms is considered completion. What are some other numbers that are completion? The biggest one is what? 7. 4 is also considered completion in the Bible. Okay, so there's several numbers that mean completion. So it is the complete people of God, starting with the 12 tribes. But then what did we see right after the 12 tribes? We saw what? Multitudes upon multitudes. We've seen that in the past, multitudes upon multitudes of people. Every tribe, tongue, nation, person, color, height, shortness, whatever. Right? Okay. We'll start in 8 next week. That is when the 7th seal of the scrolls is open, which then ushers in the first of the bowls. Okay? So the last seal of the scrolls ushers in the first of the next set of 7. Okay? So we're going to try to get through verse 8 or chapter 8 next week. I would like to watch another Shane video next week because it's going to talk about the genre of Revelation, and I think that's important to kind of wrap our head around. So, any questions, comments, concerns? We got a couple minutes. Anything that didn't make sense that I can make even more money for you? Okay, somebody finish us up, please.